Folks, thanks for tuning in again. Today we've got some news for you and some of the insights behind the news that you're not going to hear anywhere else. We're going to try and make this straight and to the point and get you on your way, or you may be on your way right now. So the situation related obviously to Iran continues. It's going to be with us for a few more weeks. I want to talk about Iran and you. The one thing that I look at reports today, continue to be amazed at around the world. Here you have Iran. And this particular regime, this particular very radical branch of Islam, they export terror around the world, along with terrorizing their own people at home. The estimates is close to 50,000 that have been killed, murdered just in the last several months after the first attack on their nuclear capability and their nuclear facility. As I'm saying, they export around the world. They fund completely the group called Hezbollah, which terrorizes Lebanon. And I've been to the border of Lebanon and Israel. Hezbollah has their encampments there. They regularly fire missiles. They fire down death on Israel. They've done that for years. Thanks to Iran. Iran also funds and equips the Houthis, another terrible extremist group of killers, and they are in Yemen and throughout the Middle East and other places. Iran also funds the so-called sleeper cells that we're seeing now emerging in the United States. There's a concern about Canada and around the world as radicalized Islamists will just rise up and just start killing innocent people. They have admitted in the last round of nuclear discussion talks with the Atomic Energy Agency, as it's called, they have admitted, and it's been proven, they have 10,000 kilos of enriched uranium, and 460 kilos of that are at the 60% range. That is the range, the 60% of enrichment. That is the range at which it can rapidly be further enriched to completion to nuclear capability in a weapon. And they have the breakout technology to advance their anti-ballistic and their ballistic missiles so they can launch this almost anywhere in the world. They have that capability, and they've promised that they want to kill all Jews all the time, everywhere. They want to evaporate and incinerate Israel. They want to kill people in the West. They have, there's the great Satan and the little Satan. Great Satan, of course, is the U.S. They see themselves, the leader who is now dead, really did see himself, and there's, as the 12th man, that's their imam, that's their prophetic imagery in terms of the one who will actually lead the bringing of death and the raining down of death on Israel and the rest of the world. They say very plainly and very clearly that they don't fear death, that they love death, they embrace death, and they know they're going to win according to themselves because we fear death, and therefore they know we will not step up to them. And so here you have the U.S. and Israel showing extreme leadership in terms of taking out the risk. And as we know, they are not, Israel and U.S., they are not going after the people. They are not, in fact, looking at boots on the ground. They are continually aiming at the military capabilities and looking at the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps themselves. And yet, all we see, or most of what we see in countries around the world and in media around the world, we see continually, we have the situation where people are moaning and saying, oh, this is just terrible, this is awful, that anybody would want to pick on or be mean to these killers, radicalized religious killers who want to incinerate the world. It's really an interesting situation. We have a situation also where I think, as I've said this before, it sort of mirrors where Europe was in the 30s, Europe and a lot of the world, with Hitler actively going into other countries, taking over other countries, terrible killings and slaughter going on, and the rest of the world saying, he doesn't really mean it. Hitler doesn't really want to take over the world, doesn't really want to kill people. And how many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives were lost, how many countries were lost before the world finally woke up under the leadership of people like Winston Churchill and said, no, we are going to stop this, we're not going to let this happen. It's a very similar situation, very paralleled. And we see just recently now, as Israel has said that they're not going to allow the leadership to continue. So the head of the militia, a gentleman by the name of Ali Larijani, I hope I pronounced his name right, he just got taken out. Anybody who gets announced in a leadership position, taking over leadership position in Iran these days, quickly that is their escort to heaven or hell, depending on your belief, because they swiftly get taken out. Well, a recent development that mainstream media is very excited about in the U.S., a gentleman by the name of Joe Kent, who has headed up a group called the Counterterrorism Group in the United States. He has resigned his post, and he has said that he is opposed to this particular war. He's opposed to the U.S. Helping Israel take out the Islamist radical nuclear-equipped regime. Quickly, it's been said that media focuses on that. They're not too much focused on people who worked with Joe Kent in leadership positions, who call him things like a crazed egomaniac. It's been brought up. We talked about the fact that Joe Kent was on Tucker Carlson's show as recently as 2004, saying that this would be a terrible direction to go, and that in fact he already had noticed that he was about to be fired. And so he did what was economically smart. He made it like he was opposed to this all along. Probably going to make a name for himself, might even get himself a talk show or a podcast, but a lot of media focus on that right now. And again, we hear, on the one hand, we look at the headlines, we see oil surging, and yet we look at the actual price. It's now a tad lower than it was yesterday, dipping just below the $100 a barrel. I even thought and predicted for a while it could hit 150. So the other countries and other reserves coming into play to keep the price of oil down around the 100 mark. Obviously, we'd like to see it lower. And we have the situation where Iran is continuing, all reports are continuing to do mass arrests of people who are opposed to them. This is in Iran. And of course, none of the people in Iran have firearms. So as with all of these dictatorial type of regimes, communist or otherwise, the people are held in fear and the army moves freely, killing and arresting. And still, we don't want to say too much about that. As a matter of fact, a recent poll as of yesterday said apparently 50% of Americans say that the U.S. involvement is all just to get to be a diversion from the Epstein files, which is pretty sad that people would think that, especially the files have been out, millions of pages, nothing that is suggested about Trump's involvement with any of these girls. We have Julian Assange, if you remember him. He's head of WikiLeaks. Julian Assange spent years in jail because he had developed ways of cracking into government files of any government, any party, and exposing them, and eventually had other governments wanting to kill him. He had to go into hiding. He was arrested for a while. He's now in Australia. And as he has combed through these files with his team, of course, when he's asked why isn't anything being said about Trump relative to the illegal involvement, especially with any of the females or the girls in the Epstein network, Julian Assange says because there is no evidence of that. But people still want to believe what they want to believe, and they want to hate Israel, they want to hate the United States, but they're thinking that we shouldn't be too mean to the Ayatollah regimes. Well, the world's central bankers, the various central banks around the world, are meeting in a number of locations this week. They're going to be deciding on what they want to do, either collectively or individually, as far as their rate, the rate of money, the rate of borrowing money. They had been on track. The guessing was that we were going to see a lowering of the interest rate, but now with inflation moving upwards because of everything involved in the war, probably guessing, and I'm going to go with the guess that says they're going to be in a holding pattern. They're not going to be lowering rates. Cuba is continuing to be up front in the headlines. They are running out of oil. In fact, it looks like they have run out. Remember, they used to get the oil primarily from Venezuela, which was the head of narco-terrorism around the world. And Cuba, being a communist regime, never did allow the abilities for companies to thrive, for companies to develop their own energy sources. It's a sad day when a country cannot take care of its own citizens in terms of just keeping them warm and keeping electricity going. That is the result of a of a vicious repressive communist regime, again, that mainstream culturally Marxist media never had a bad word to say about. I've been to Cuba and been there on an agriculture mission and on humanitarian missions, and once you get out of Havana, you just see the poverty everywhere, the fact even Canadian media still raves about the Cuban healthcare system, which actually is virtually non-existent. We talked to many people who said it's not the doctor's fault. The doctors don't get paid, and so if they want services, they've got to dig up some money and find a way to get some money to a doctor so they can get looked at. It's a total devastated country for many, many decades. Mainstream media never saying anything about it, and now they are on the brink of folding, of collapsing, because they never allowed their own people to develop an infrastructure that can keep them warm and keep them powered up. Well, in the Canadian healthcare system is getting attention. Headlines in the U.S. and a couple of major publications yesterday talking about Canada leading the world in terms of the lineups to get basic care, lineups to get emergency care. These are now our situation, the Canadian healthcare system being reported around the world. You know, as Canadians, we sometimes are so blinded by mainstream media, we refuse to think anything could be negative about Canada. But when it comes to the various protocols and the various measurements that are put into healthcare system, Canada does not rate well at all. As a matter of fact, in many of the categories, we're among the worst in terms of democratic countries. This is not a knock on the doctors and the nurses and the care providers. They are solid people. They're well-educated people, but it's a case of good people being trapped in a bad system. Matter of fact, in a terrible system. And look at all, you know, we have had, and certainly I found out the hard way, tried to introduce the fact that you could have choice in healthcare. You could have a two-tiered system to a degree, where first of all, you have to have the guarantee that everybody's healthcare is taken care of, everybody's healthcare is free, and it's universal. But you can have a two-tiered system, or let's say a parallel system, where doctors can work in both systems and provide care in both and provide better technology in both. And Canada is the only, that I can find, the only non-communist country that does not allow any choice in terms of selecting systems for your healthcare. The UK allows it, France allows it, Germany allows it, Norway allows it. Norway, which is the darling of all socialist countries, even though it's not a socialist country, it's just fabulously wealthy because of their oil and gas reserves, which they have sold around the world for years, and so they can provide these kind of things to their people. Australia, the Netherlands, Holland, all allow choice in the system while still providing free health care for those who want the public system. And Canada is stubbornly putting up with terrible levels of care. Again, not a factor of the doctors, because we know, and politicians know, and I found this out, I can tell you the hard way, if you dare suggest improvement to the system by allowing doctors to have choice, you will get absolutely shredded in the media. They will launch attacks on you, the viciousness of which, until you've experienced it, you just can't realize how communistically focused they are in a healthcare system. So we'll continue to provide a poorer system to our citizens, and longer lineups and more people dying in waiting rooms, until we have politicians and political parties who are willing to stand up and at least get the conversation going on what the possibilities are of improvement are. Talk about a time to speak up, Bill C9. We've talked about that. If you haven't called your member of parliament yet, this is the bill that takes away any kind of religious protection, that takes away the protection of ministers, pastors, rabbis, imams to read scriptures in their own pulpit. And added to that is Bill C-63. It's called the Online Harms Act. I can tell you that any time in history a government wants to take away the freedoms of their people, they will almost always do it under the guise of safety. It's to protect you that we're doing this and taking away their freedoms. Keep that in mind. We can look to, there's just reports out as recently as yesterday on the EU. They have some similar legislation going through. They call it the Digital Service Act. The Digital Service Act. They had a report done, the Neil Data Report, it's called, and the report is titled New Wave. And what they're doing with the Digital Services Act, they want to protect people from hate online. They want to protect people from bullying online. And in that, they say, where are some of the greatest concerns about the hatred coming from? From people who are supposedly quoting from medical surveys, medical studies, even people involved in the health and medical provisions themselves, and people who bring forth concerns about certain health approaches related to gender, related to the LGBTQ community. I would have thought that all of this massive need for legislation was to protect on the grounds of religious, but no, they are clearly targeting, they are referring to people who have concerns in these areas and want to see all studies, for instance, gender-related studies and gender alteration studies. They are being referred to as radical, as anti-gender, whatever that might mean, as being religious fanatic. That is where the Digital Services Act is going in Europe. And people, the worry is people who want to publish things online relative to that, in fact, are not going to be able to and could be subject themselves to arrest. Well, I don't want to make you too nervous about everything that's going on, especially as we hear about the Iran war. Did you notice that just 2 days ago, NASA published an amazing report? Because, you know, it's a matter of folklore and a matter of sci-fi type movies that we worry about one day, you know, could the Earth get hit with a massive asteroid and we all get blown to pieces? Well, NASA has just completed their report on a project, took about a year to do, in which they equipped and they sent a space vehicle through space. It traveled for 10 months all the way, and it's called the double asteroid redirection test. In fact, they wanted to see if they blew up an asteroid, if it could alter the direction of the asteroid. Fairly massive project. And so they did this, went to a small moon way out there. I had the name of it, but I can't pronounce it anyway, but 10 months to get there. And they fired their explosive missiles at this very large asteroid or moon. And guess what? It did alter the direction of that moon and that asteroid. Reports are then we've proven that if the asteroid isn't too big and it's coming at us, we'll have time to blow it to pieces or at least knock its direction elsewhere. Well, the dating app Tinder has taken a bit of a new direction. They found they were getting less and less action, less and less requests on the particular app, less people interested. Part of that is because of this disturbing trend that more and more people are finding artificial companions on their devices, and they're talking more and more, I know it sounds strange, to their artificial companions. And upwards of 30% of people are doing that. And maybe this is why there's less dating. So Tinder has come out with, they're calling it, it's not just contact, but Tinder event datings, where they'll advertise where there's a place where people can go and they can play board games, they can do poetry readings, all kinds of things. So Tinder getting away itself from strictly online, becoming a little more human. I'll leave that thought with you. The Oscars now, the numbers are in. I talked about the Oscars yesterday, down again in viewership this year. 19 million is the number. Now people say, well, wow, 19 million, that's a lot of viewers. Consider that in the 90s, consistently, all the way through the 90s, watching the Oscars viewership was upwards of 50 million. 50 million people, down to 19 million and dropping. And part of that reason was because for the last several years, the celebrities took it upon themselves to try and sound politically smarter than anybody else and to try and ram and jam their political views down on us. Turns out most people don't like that, either on the left or the right. And if you noticed in the event this year, hardly any, there was a few little references, but hardly any political attacks. They're smartening up in Hollywood and realizing maybe there's less people watching them because of some of their silly views. One view that got, or one speech that's getting a little bit of pushback, Jessie Buckley, and of course she won, as we predicted she would, the Best Actress Award in the movie Hamnet. She came out, her speech was remarkably personal, warm, touching. She didn't do the woe is me thing. A number of them, they talked about how they're so poor and grew up having nothing, and maybe there's some good stories there, but hers was remarkably personal and a line that really resonated. It's encouraged a lot of people, and that some in the media are mad at. She talked about the chaos of a mother's heart. She was reflecting on her own kids and raising a family, and in a positive way, talking about the chaos of a mother's heart, reflecting actually really right out of Proverbs 31, for those of you who would be familiar with that, with the absolutely essential and important role of mothers and women through society. And so a positive note there to Jessica Buckley. Hope she doesn't get criticized too much for talking about a mother's heart. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you tomorrow.